Yes.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Is the
Hey.
intro happening, or we're just?
Oh yeah, did we do the intro song?
So it's happening now.
You gotta say
Still
like.
Yanni?
Is it Yanni? Yanni?
Shout out Gianni.
Yanni.
Wait, really?
It's why we'll never make money.
Oh, I love Yanni. Well, like I love watching the YouTube video of his concert, Yanni Live. It's when I'm sad. It's really good.
When you're sad.
It's like everyone's just really into it, and like then everyone gets a solo, and Yanni like presents them, and you can tell he's like seems so proud of them, and he.
Oh, you're talking about Yanni.
And then he like has all of these keyboards, and he's just like doing shit, and everyone's just like going for it, and everyone's like smiling a lot.
Yanni is like Fish, the band Fish with a P, like enormous followings, enormous worldwide followings, and yet can't think of anyone who actually likes that and I can't explain why anyone would.
I can think of
I mean, other than what you just described, sort of.
Aaron likes Yanni, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I could listen to the music like by itself. It might be the concerts. It might be the performance.
It could be, yeah.
That they like.
He brings all the grandiosity of prog rock and none of the rock of it, I guess. I actually don't know. I don't know Yanni's music that well. So.
You should check out the concert. It's probably on YouTube still.
Next meeting, Tim's like, you guys, Yanni.
I probably will.
Yeah,
that is for shit. Sure.
Wait, that please.
Totally. And he's funny.
Go on.
I like this, except that I think the white blood cell is awk. Right? Silk.
But the planet is not the like. They have to leave the planet. They have to leave.
Wasn't the plan always that they've got to get off of this?
Humans would be the infection in this scenario. The silk is like silk or awk, whoever the active ingredient is, would be like a vaccine.
Maybe it's like an autoimmune thing, you know, like the ship is for the people, but now it has to get them out. You know,
I'm into this idea because it kind of implies that the point of life is to die, which is a thing that I'm very, very into.
Cool.
Mm. It would be really interesting if they all went Heaven's Gate on it, and if Donald Trump dies, they're all like, well, we're dying too, and then they all kill themselves. I'm not hoping for that, but
I mean, you hear a lot of talk about the sort of like contemporary right wing being a death cult.
Mm-hmm.
Not like that, and that kind of rhetoric was happening even before this COVID thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
But this sort of like onward march to like planetary annihilation, pretty much.
This conspiracy is called Plan B. The BBC made a documentary about it in the early '80s, a mockumentary, I believe, actually, that that the elites have arcs that they are going to board it and leave.
I mean, that's not crazy. Like you look.
Well, it's not happening.
Yeah, I mean, like you get the richest guy in the world who does not deserve any of his money is notably funneling as much of it as possible into space travel.
Several of them have said the whole point of having this money is to get off planet.
Yeah.
Damn.
Like more than one.
And they're not doing it for everyone. They're doing it for them.
Yeah, they got a price tag.
After we're done streaming, I have to tell you guys something that relevant to this that would be actually illegal for me to tell you. Actually, it's illegal for me to tell you anyway, but it would be really illegal for me to tell you over the open internet. So.
This is when Jen Kirby reveals she has a ticket on the arc off planet.
I think that would be legal. That would probably be legal. I didn't have to do. Yeah,
wait, you just said on the internet that you're going to tell us something that would be illegal.
Yeah.
Now we have to wait. We have to wait 3 hours.
You know who does that kind of thing all the time? Joe Rogan.
Don't tell us. Don't tell us what it is, okay? Promise you won't tell us what it is.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you.
Thank you.
I think Mercury Theater Television is on the fast track to becoming the antidote to Joe Rogan. We're like
I'm a little afraid. I'm just afraid.
We're like the
non-shitty
hippies doing the very long streaming shows where we talk about illegal things.
Anyway, let's talk about it. Hold on, I got to get my book.
The border and the larder.
Put the computer on the toilet. Who are you referring to, Ryan?
There's the driver. He comes back.
Will it?
Will it?
No.
I mean, they talk about the Caldi. Right?
Tussa. Old Tussa.
Yeah, but I think she's referred to in this chapter. Briefly. No. Vampires on the horizon.
Another immune system. Or something. I guess they would be like, what are those fetal cells?
Stem cells?
Yeah, stem cells. Though we can't really talk about that in this book. That comes later.
Did anyone else notice an inconsistency in Silk and Driver's conversation?
Mm-mm.
The first thing the driver asks Silk is what? Have you ever driven one of these before?
Mm.
Now, if you look several pages later, at page 156 in the edition that a lot of us have, the driver asks him again at the bottom of the page, "You didn't ride out with me, did you, Katera?" And Silk says, "No, not with you. I came with another man." I guess Silk there is referring to walking over with Ock, but the
Well,
driver
they rode.
They rode donkeys.
they drove. Well, they're right. They rode donkeys. But to the driver's asking him twice. Is the driver trying to like suss some information out of him here?
Definitely.
That's what I think.
Because he's a spy. He's a Trivigunti spy.
Right,
Yeah.
he is
Yeah.
a spy.
What's his real name? Hassan? Yeah, Hosan.
What's on?
Which, just to keep score, Willet is a bird of the snipe family, which is interesting because he's a crane agent, and so maybe we should be paying attention to bird names.
Oh, you know what I was thinking? But I just realized, like,
Hawk is also a bird.
Hawk is also a bird.
A shorebird, right?
Yeah. And then-
Iceland Needler has a like heron on it in addition to Hyacinth.
also, Hassan means horse. Well, Hussein rather is horse, and Hassan itself is handsome. And Hosan, I guess, is straddling those two, according to the companion. So it's interesting that he's driving the car because he's a horse.
Big
I don't like how it looks.
with a reclining.
And also, last time we determined that hyacinth is both a plant and a gemstone.
Right. I've definitely wondered what the hell that meant and just never figured it out.
I just thought it meant that it should be blue like a hyacinth.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool.
Boink.
It seems like
So I
if
get
anything, at the very least, if it's not a hint that she's like, I mean, there's no reason to not think she's modified since like half the characters are modified in this book in some form. But like, she's just not who she says she is. Like, she's straddling a lot of because she's people. She's straddling a lot.
Straddling a lot.
You know.
generals.
Commissioners.
He has sex with people. Yeah, whatever.
But so we know that the Azoth then must be Bloods because it's a bloodstone.
They talk about that. I think we explicitly find out the whole deal. I remember them talking about where she got the Azoth from later. With Crane later. They have a conversation about it. But she does get it. Oh, who she gets it from? Yeah, she gets it from somebody. Maybe it was Blood. We'll find out.
It's quite an elaborate gift.
A Jedi sword,
Yeah.
Fucking
weapon for a more elegant time.
Yeah, it's not something that you would just give to some like chick who's in your house to bang soldiers, or
Well, she's not really in his house for him to bang.
the girl. No, not for him to bang. It's for his guest. A guest in his house for his guest that she likes to entertain. And then, and if it was from one of those guys, like it's definitely. Is it from Crane? I don't remember.
I think it's from the companion volume says that the Azoth was meant for blood,
Okay.
but that Hyacinth gives it to Silk.
Interesting.
But it's in Hyacinth's drawer.
Mm-hmm.
So
She's supposed to pass it
was
along.
it going to be a gift from Hyacinth to Blood?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I guess we should assume that it's from the Triviganti to blood.
Yeah.
Can you repeat?
You just mean men. Like, are the gender reversed?
I think men are more explicitly oppressed, like explicitly.
Yeah, I think they got a Sharia law kind of situation.
Yeah, it's that.
Because they talk about like how the Crane and his spies are given special permissions to behave more like a woman and have the power that a woman would have, and how that's unusual for them.
Mhm.
I think agency. They are agents. They are also chemically, since we're talking about azots, reagents. They are catalysts for the massive change that's going on here, down to that it's Crane's death that triggers the Trivaganti invasion. Like when Crane dies, that's when they launch the airship. So they're agents in the spy sense, but reagents in a chemical sense. Thank you. Anyhow, this is the chapter where I start getting very excited about this book, I think.
Sounds like some real fun conservative propaganda there.
Well, not necessarily
well.
conservative propaganda, because, I mean, in this book at least, the men, I don't think they really think that Viennese culture is better than Trivaganti.
Yeah, they're not. Wait, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, they think Byron sucks for sure.
What, Viren sucks?
Yeah, they think so, right?
Oh.
The
I mean,
spy.
it does. Right? Its government is absolutely corrupt, taken over by the prosimians. They've gone the opposite route of us and completely gotten rid of their executive branch and given all the power to the legislative branch. Yeah, the Viren does suck. Mm-hmm.
Oh, like a commission or
Hold on. Counselor. He's a counselor. I think so. He's a lemur.
Hmm.
Oh, I think maybe. An interesting note on this, in this line of questioning, Tarsier is the guy who made chem bodies for all the prosimians to download themselves into, evolving into transhuman creatures. Mm-hmm. Cybercop. Also, another name for Tarsier is Spectre.
Huh.
So he's got a ghostly aspect.
Another name for the character or the animal?
The animal. They're from Sumatra, Borneo, Celebes, and Philippines, and also are called Malmag or Spectre.
Cool.
I think it's the third book.
Yeah, I think so.
And the second book, right? Or
In the
no, it's
second
the third book I'm thinking of, probably. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
That's in the third book?
We're going at a glacial pace on this book. On these books.
I feel like there's so much more in this book than there was in New Sun.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more mystery. Like in New Sun, you could kind of pick it up after a little bit. Like, oh, we're on the Earth. It's way in the future. Okay, and that kind of helps ground you a little bit. Whereas, if you remember, like the first time you read through this, or can imagine giving this book to someone for the first time, the nature of this world is much more mysterious. And even when we're analyzing it, a lot of the mysteries are still pretty mysterious.
Yeah.
There's more mystery here. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, soon we won't get enough information at all about anything that happens.
Right, so Horn is part of that because if you're a Horn and you venerate this person, then every micro action and conversation that this person had is a holy and essential thing to recount. Whereas if you're Severian and you're thinking I get to choose what the important parts are and I'll tell them in this way. But to Horn, it's every part is an important part because he's obsessed with this person. And then it lends itself to the
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mantic interpretation. Mm-hmm. It's also during this ride, while Silk is being grilled by a spy, he has a little thought to himself about how blood has manipulated him into being an agent for blood.
Yeah. The line between burglar and augur becomes blurred.
Mm-hmm.
Blurgler.
Blurgler. Yeah, that's kind of like possession. It's the more generic brand of godly possession.
The more real world brand of godly possession, I would say.
Yeah. The archetypes in his head are exchanging places.
It's interesting. I was just going to say, later on, they discuss consciousness briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Crane and Silk, and Crane is yeah, you can't that's just an abstraction. And I think the idea of what possession is kind of embedded into these couple of chapters here. we do see that Silk is possessed in a way by Blood's manipulation.
Yeah.
But we also see that possession seems like something that exists here through beings like Mooker as well. Like you can be literally possessed, but Crane doesn't see that as a possibility. Or, that if one were possessed, it doesn't work exactly like we might think it is. Where I would think, you would kind of wake up inside the person and the possessor is kind of controlling the person like you control a mech or something. But it might not work that way. Being possessed might be different somehow, but I'm unclear as to what that would be like.
Do you think that Mukor is aware of her own physical body even as she is inhabiting another physical body?
No.
Why do you think that?
It's because she lives around turds, I feel like she just doesn't care about the physical body. If she could sense it, she'd be ignoring it.
All right, I feel that.
Wait, can you ask the question again?
Do you think that Mukor is aware of her own physical body? The physical body that is generating her consciousness, even
the one that's in Blood's house.
Right, even as she is inhabiting another physical body.
So the thing that comes to mind for me with that is that isn't it the case that in order to, there's something about like to get her to come back into her own body, they torture her body.
Oh.
There's something about that.
That could be why they slap.
And that to me would suggest that no, not real. Oh, Mukor can leave her body to search around and possess people, but torturing her body brings her back to it. So that would lead, or that's what it says in here. So that would lead me to believe that basically she's not.
Yeah.
I mean, she has a connection to it because,
right.
But like, she's not like feeling all the sensations of it.
Yeah,
like it has to be, or it's like, it's probably just like buried back there, running in the background, and you have to like do something to like shock it back into the foreground.
So she's as aware of her body as we are aware of our internal organs, perhaps.
Something like that. Yeah. Where it's like something fucked up happens, and you're like, oh, I have a stomach.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also there's another kind of possession that I feel like the unreligious people who think that there's a devil possessing someone at Orchids, that seems to be a slightly different understanding of possession than like Silk's religious kind or Mukor's weird thing, she like psychic kind.
Yeah.
There's like a superstitious kind that some people seem to believe in.
Yeah, and that's sort of outside of the realm of the gods.
Do cities outside of Byron also have screens and gods and shit, or is that just a strictly Viennese thing?
Well, we know that Triviganti have Sphegics.
They
But do they have? But does it work the same way?
I think it's Cypress talks about how she mentions it, and she says, yeah, like Byron is the only city where gods have stopped watching people through windows.
Oh.
Where what?
There's much more like god activity in other cities. Byron is the only one where they have windows that don't work, that haven't been doing anything. Like it's a normal thing, but they don't care about it as much. Like they don't have this for religion too.
That's breaking news.
So then I wonder if the failure of the windows is somehow connected to the Prosimian treachery.
I think.
Yeah. Undermine.
Would be in some circles an evolution out of having religion into a more postmodern, egocentric man as God kind of thing.
It makes me think a lot of the story that Jonas telling about the robots and the history in New Sun. You know that man created these robots that were so great, and they didn't realize the part of them that they gave up to make the robots was the best part of them. So then the robots tried to go and save that part. You know what I'm talking about? That story.
Yeah.
I feel like what you're outlining with these monkeys right now is very, very similar story.
Sure. Maybe it's an inevitable part of human evolution.
And
actually, you know what this is? This is original sin. This is the fall. You know,
separating
God,
yourself.
Here's everything you need. Adam and Eve are like, well, what if we just take a little bit more? Which then he's like, okay, you think you're so great, you're going to have to think you're so great in order to survive now, instead of just being able to just survive. And now figure out that participation in a holistic universe rather than putting yourself at the top is a better way to survive.
Do you think this particular culture just kind of moved away over time from an emphasis on the gods, or do you think it was purposefully kind of sabotaged by agents who perhaps wanted to minimize the role of gods in Viron?
That's a good question.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a combination of the two, right? Because it's a historical movement away from religion, but there are certain people that make decisions that move that, make forward.
Yeah.
It makes me think of one of the main weird problem, and not like quibbles, but like conundrums that I feel about Long Sun, of where like this book feels Protestant to me. And like Protestantism is one of the things is like, no, you don't need a priest to have a relationship with God. You can have a personal relationship with God. And that is part of what facilitates the rise of science in our world.
I think I feel a little bit of what you're talking about, but to me, it's not Protestantism. It's it's mysticism. It's like, and it plays into my idea about this immune system thing a little bit too, in that like when thinking becomes too rigid and too proud, there is this weird system that kicks in that like revitalizes religion. And I think Protestantism is like a very specific recent historical phenomenon that has elements of that, but that like the greater set of like religion of any kind anywhere being overturned by mystics, which happens within religions as well. Like I feel like that's the presence that might feel Protestant is like a bigger embracing of mystic renewal.
So you mean like religions become too rigid over time, like they become too established, like this is this rule, this is this rule, this is how this works, this is the God who means this, and that there's an internal mechanism in the evolution of religion as a overall concept that like must abstract that and deconstruct those in order for the religion to.
I would say society is the big thing that becomes too rigid, and then religion within that has within it the mystic thing that kicks in when the whole system's too sick. But it's not just looking at religion; it's looking at the society the religion is in.
This is kind of the story that's told over and over again throughout the Bible. A prophet comes out of the desert, tells everyone to be groovy. The priests say, yes, be groovy. Here are all the rules to be groovy. And then that
repeats,
ossifies, and then another prophet has to come out of the desert and say, no, these rules are causing you to not be groovy, just be groovy. And the cycle starts again.
Man, I would give anything for a chapter where they visit another city, and like kind of like see how life works over there. I think.
Yeah, what the fuck is herbs like?
Yeah,
that's got to be the genre. That should be all of the post-Wolfe super freaks should be required to write at least one cycle that occurs in a city in the world.
A whole cycle, not just a short story.
A whole cycle.
Yeah, just a little cycle. It could be a little cycle.
Okay.
Just like a quadrilogy
But how sick would it be if then like we could read the book about the Aramini city in the Whirl, and then go over to Connor City and wow, what a different culture there is here, and then Derusi City. Ooh, look at all the archives of information. Their great library, etc., and so on.
Okay. Yeah, if I only do I have to do a whole cycle? Can it just be like? Can it just
Maybe
be?
a short story. Maybe just a short story. We don't have to.
Can it be like one 4-book series?
Yeah. It could even be one 4-part book, I think.
Okay.
This is all like very fun, but I actually think like one volume of short stories that each took place in like different places in the world by different authors is a really sick idea.
That would be pretty tight.
Yeah.
Joseph says Palustria is Night Choff Central. Let me go there.
Night Choff Central.
Orb is
Where
so
all Night
cool.
Choff come from?
Orb's appearance is so awesome. It's like I feel like it has all the impact of a great Disney scene.
Definitely.
Just a couple of words.
Can we change the name of our show to Night Shot Central?
Central. Oh man, that's our offshoot podcast.
Night
Oh
Choff
my
Central.
god, it's such a good name.
It is very actually. Speaking of Disney scenes where you meet talking animals, last night Madison and I watched Hocus Pocus, which has a very similar thing happen.
The Bette Midler movie?
Yeah. There's a talking cat.
That's funny. Sarah and I watched The Witches from 1990 last night.
Oh, that's
with,
a great movie.
Angelica Houston and Rowan Atkinson is actually in that too. Mr. Bean.
That's definitely on my list.
Mr. Bean.
I'm disappointed in that movie because I watched it because it was directed by Nicholas Roeg, and it is nothing like Performance or The Man Who Fell to Earth.
For bad timing.
Is Witches Rolled Doll?
Yeah.
It's my favorite called all this. There's a new one coming out.
Yeah.
Is anyone we know in it?
Kristen Stewart. Is she in it? I just said that.
I think Kristen Stewart is doing everything she can to distance herself from children's movies about mythological figures.
She did do Charlie's Angels recently.
There's a new Charlie's Angels.
Yeah, with Kristen Stewart.
She plays
No
all three
one
of them.
liked it. No one saw it.
Did
Is
she
she in
have
Twilight?
Yeah.
That's
It has
okay.
that whole part of the other movie. And have the spark and the sparkle of Drew Barrymore, Lucy Liu, and Cameron Diaz.
Yeah, did they
Why do
do
I feel like Charlie's Angels comes up in every episode?
It's Jordan.
Wait.
She loves the Angels.
It's part of the Wolfpack canon now.
Charlie's Angels.
does the
Star
remake
Trek,
of Charlie's
Angels.
the remake of Charlie's Angels, does it have the Prodigy song in it and like
Probably not.
dirt bike races? Does it have an equivalent to when Cameron Diaz dances in those underoos?
I bet there's not.
That's all Ryan cares about.
There's only
No
two,
one.
there's only 2 scenes in Charlie's Angels, I guess, and then you got Crispin Glover too, huh?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's why I mentioned it last time. I really do. I didn't realize I mentioned it that much. But that's
I've never seen it.
Me neither.
I saw
So
it
it
in the
like
theater.
sticks out to me. It sticks out to me
I also saw it in the theater for some reason.
for some reason.
I don't remember.
It's good.
What?
It
I
is
mean, you were probably like 15 or 16 when it came out.
Yeah,
I mean, that's right.
Sure. Oh.
I think I was in middle school, so I'm just assuming everybody else
Yeah,
saw it at an older age.
somewhere around there.
Oh, so we were talking about how the burglar and the fading and the auger returning, and I underlined how immediately after that, he had sounded exactly like Patera Pike. Which was he, really? He pushed aside the thought. Now this here feels just like a boat, and no mistake, don't it, Patera? I thought it's interesting that those things run together. That, he's the burglar and the auger, he's Patera Pike and he's Patera Silk, and now the thing he's in is a boat and a car. and which one is it really, and are they different things? Are these floaters boats? Really? Actually, they kind of are boats in the sense that the spaceships in New Sun were boats.
Well, and they behave like boats, right?
Yeah. And he says it feels just like a boat with no mistake.
Way more than a boat than a car. Sounds like.
Yeah.
There's that weird part where he runs someone over, too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, check out what I can do, and he just
like a drunk guy, right? There's like a guy in the road. He's just like. Yeah.
But he'd never do it over a kid. He said, "He'd never do it over a kid. They might stick their hand up."
That would be mean. But a drunk man, like, fuck it, that guy deserves that shit.
Also, we don't even know he was drunk. He just says, he's probably drunk. He's not dead. Let's run over him. That's better.
It's very much riding over, like trampling someone in the street, like they're upper class, right? Like blood in the floaters. That's how I always picture meeting Beyonce, is that like she comes in a horse-drawn carriage and one of your friends gets run over, but you get to see her wave.
What?
But they're happy about it.
I got you.
Yeah,
Glad to get run over by Beyonce.
Yeah, people were like, I did get to see her up close. My child is not going to walk, but this is how the classes work.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very much like driving in Baltimore, if you've ever driven around here, and you watch people who like speed. There's like people who speed when they drive, and then people like me and everyone on Greenmount who walks into the street as close to cars as possible as cars are like flying past. And there's like this tension between driver and pedestrian that like builds up over the years and generations, especially in cities like Baltimore that heavily prioritize automobile traffic over literally all elements of like civic life, and so anyway, there's always that like little bit, but I feel like for the drivers, it's like, fuck yeah, I'm going to drive as fast as possible and not slow down when this human being is walking out into Greenmount, in front of me, like, fuck that person, and for the walkers, it's like, this is my street, and I don't have a car, and I walk to get it.
But everyone, like, if everyone who drives also occupies that role when they're not driving, like, they also are like, slow down, fuck you, when they're walking. Like, if everyone is on all the sides of the thing, everyone who's like driving is like, these cyclists don't stop. And then when you're riding the bike, when you're not in your car, when you're riding your bike, you're like, these drivers.
I'm curious how often people actually get I guess it does happen, but like, I don't know.
You don't see it as much as you would think it would happen.
Really, because there's a fearlessness to Baltimore jaywalking that is unparalleled in, I think, any other American city.
But it also means it also trains you, though, to when you're driving, you're ready for that to happen at any point. Like, you're fully like ready for someone to walk out, for someone to start crossing the street right when the light turns green or whatever. Like, that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely, as a pedestrian, especially in the past couple of months, have taken to screaming at bicyclists, but more often scooters that are on the sidewalk.
Oh,
yeah. That's annoying. That's something we can all agree you shouldn't do.
Bikes on the sidewalk is infuriating.
I hate it.
As someone who rides a bike, I totally agree. I think it's annoying and you should ride on the street.
Yeah,
there
absolutely.
was a skinny little guy that I yelled at. He was riding his bike on St. Paul. He rode by me and I said, "Get the fuck off the sidewalk. It's illegal." And then he stopped and came back and was like, "I'm sorry, I'm new here. What am I supposed to do? I'm trying to follow the Jones Fall Trail, and it's printed into the sidewalk, so I'm just following it." And I was like,
there's a bike lane the whole length of St. Paul Street.
Yeah, it's the most obvious bike lane in the city.
His thing was that he was going north, and St. Paul runs south.
So don't go on St. Paul.
Go on Maryland Avenue.
Go on Calvert. Go on Charles.
You guys don't be angry at the bikers. Be angry at the system. They don't have anywhere to go.
No.
No, there's
That's
plenty
not
of.
true. They do
As
have
a
places to go.
cyclist, I would disagree. There's plenty. You
That used to be
don't
true.
have to ride on the fucking street and like use your brain. Like, don't ride
There are places
on
to
the
go.
worst, most high traffic streets.
Like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, if they're gonna go on the sidewalk, because I hate it too, and I've since decided like I can't put any more emotional energy into this. But now what I care about is that they don't use bells. I'm like, if you just use a fucking bell and let me know that you're about to zip right by my fucking like, well, how do they know I'm not just gonna step aside for no fucking reason? Like, come the fuck on. It's really
It's the cycle of abuse because like they're riding on the sidewalk because they're afraid if they ride on the road, a car is going to do to them what we're afraid they're going to do to us when we're walking on the sidewalk with their vehicle.
Well, the law's on my side.
I think this is an interesting like conversation. I do think it's relevant to this little bit in this like little bit of the world of the long sun here. And I like this is something I care about a lot, these kind of discussions. And I read about historically when they introduced cars into cities, you know, cities had roads and roads were used for a million different kinds of things beforehand,
Right.
you know, like for people to get around in many different ways. And then cars, not everyone had cars at first, you know? So then you just had some cars driving through cities with like people also walking in streets and taking their horses or whatever the fuck they would do, right? Or riding bikes or whatever. But it was at that time that cars actually became incredibly controversial because cars were hitting people constantly. You know, like people were like, this is bad. Like a car driving through our town is really bad, you know? Like it shouldn't happen.
they're a menace.
And yeah, and you know, like the introduction of cars into the worlds of urban space, you know, was something that happened with a lot of intention and a lot of business interest over the course of decades to a lot of opposition at each step. But anyway, I bring it up because, you know, here in this world, it seems that floaters aren't so common, right?
Right.
Like they're not all the time. Like there's not floaters flying around like when I look out my window right now, there's like cars flying past, you know, every second. Floaters are more like when it was like back in the old days. Like some people have them, right? The wealthy have them. But is it a kind of thing where everyone used to have them? Like was everyone given a floater in the early days of the world? Like everyone had a mirror, you know, like or a glass. Like
I don't
where
think
you
so.
could-
I don't think so because I think that I mean, the whole idea of the world is to, as the offspring said, got to keep them separated.
Yeah. No.
hey.
No.
Come on.
We don't go there.
No, let's not.
I thought he
Let's
was going to
not.
say pretty fly for a white guy.
The true offspring song.
Well, yeah. I mean,
So, but
Everyone-
you're saying, Connor, that it's essential that the classes are established and that was done. One of the ways that was done was probably through technology.
I think he's talking about keeping all of the cities also have to be kept separate. So like you don't want that many like high speed modes of transportation because you need to keep like all the little cities separate.
Because then you could take it to go elsewhere.
Yeah, it
But
wasn't
floaters still exist though.
part of what in our world made it cars popular and made it so that every family had a car, if not two cars, was Eisenhower's interstate.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know,
Well, so
they don't own an interstate, so they won't have cars.
something that comes up a lot in these kind of conversations too. Like I work with someone who he has a car, but he's like a 90% of the time rides a bike, and he's like a real cyclist enthusiast or whatever. But he's been on this thing lately about parking, street park, because I keep saying like, oh, this rules how all these spots are just because COVID. It's like all these restaurants, you just take the parking lane out, and now you have like an outside restaurant, and I think that's cool. And like, fuck it, anytime you take space away from cars, I think it's cool. But my friend, he's like, man, I just don't get street parking anyway. It's like we're paying taxes forever. It's just like you have a free spot to put your personal property, and people feel totally entitled to it. And he's like, I just don't get it. Like, why everyone feels like they have to like have like a right to street parking or whatever.
When I lived
And
down,
my argument is that the only way, and this goes to what Tim is saying too before, but like cars don't make any sense. Like they're a pain in the ass to have. They're a pain in the ass to maintain. They cost a bunch of money. And like the only way that you can convince everyone that they have to have a car, or like the only way you can maintain that as a system is you have to have as much of reality like centered around it as possible to make it where it's this just kind of a fact of life or whatever. Like you have to have just like street parking or whatever, or no one's gonna have a car because it's like you have like part of the point of it is to maintain that as the main system of transportation. Like you have to just provide. You can't have the minute people have to think too much about where they're gonna put their car, they're not gonna have cars anymore. Like, I mean, like think about New York. There's nobody has cars in New York because there's nowhere to put them.
But there are so many cars in New York. Like you can't exactly
per capita. It's like so much less
lower.
So many of the cars that are in New York are from people who drove to New York, not people who live in New York.
Right. Although that's a mistake. Driving anything in New York is miserable.
And they had to, like GM bought up all the trolley lines and just like paved over them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had to just literally destroy all the other ways you could have gotten around.
And this is the movie Roger Rabbit.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
It absolutely
bought
is.
the red car.
I love that element of Roger Rabbit.
Roger Rabbit is a great movie. I watched it recently for the millionth time. You got to revisit it every few years. Just did. Still holds up. That's my report. Great movie.
One of the best experiences is to watch Roger Rabbit with an adult who is watching it for the first time.
Whoa!
It's a whole new movie.
How often does that happen?
I feel like everybody's seen that.
I've done it once every 10 years since I became an adult.
What happened?
Kenny also is like, he's like, this is Roger Rabbit is Chinatown. Like the same movie.
Yeah.
Totally, exactly.
Yeah. It's inspired
and now
by
I really
Chinatown.
want to rewatch. Now I really want to rewatch Chinatown.
So good.
It is
the next Batman movie is also going to be Chinatown, apparently.
With Robert Pattinson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
another person from Twilight.
Huh. Interesting.
Here.
But it's like always just kind of disappointing. I feel like when there's $1 million movies made where they're like, you know what we'll do? We'll make that other movie that's good, but with people that are young.
Yeah.
It's not very inspiring.
Doesn't excite me.
And I believe in myths and archetypes and telling stories over again. I just feel like they're like that.
There's never any value added.
Yeah.
There's never any value added.
To this point, it depends on how you do it. I'm sorry, the White Goddess talks about how the culture war is fought by taking the older culture story, breaking it down to its elements, and then rearranging those elements to tell the story of the culture that you're trying to make.
Yeah, it's a new interpretation.
Right. So
I think
in that sense they're wildly successful.
I think it becomes an issue when it's things like a superhero, which is already a sort of reinterpretation of a myth, that then becomes sort of this static mythology of its own. And then you just have this situation where, I mean, occasionally you get revisionist takes on it. You get more interesting versions of Batman or Superman or whatever. But for the most part, it's just a continuation of the same corporate corporate property, and it's no longer. I don't know. I think that there are a lot of people who are like, oh, superheroes are modern myths, and there's something to that, but they're also modern myths that are controlled by capitalism.
Yeah, they're the modern myths created by the overlords.
Yeah, and they're the religion that will be supplanted and overthrown by true mystics.
Having said this, The Boys, the television show going on right now on Amazon, is doing an amazing job.
Kenny every week. Kenny asks me if that has come up on the. Kenny's been watching it, and every week he's like, "Has it come up on the?"
Well, this week you can say yes.
You'll be very excited to know.
What The Boys is doing is incredible, I think.
I need to watch it because apparently one of the main characters wears a shirt from one of my favorite wrestlers. So now I have to watch it.
What is the concept of The Boys? Is like superheroes are real and they work for rich people?
No,
they're the villains.
Rich
right?
people
they're
work
like
for superheroes. The superheroes are the ultimate, like Homelander, who is Superman. His whole point is, I can do anything that I want, so I have to do whatever I want, and everybody has to adhere to that. And he's become very much a whiny baby Donald Trump kind of figure. And then, like, racism is it. So also this show is so much better than the comic books in that in the show, Homelander, Superman, is this clone of a thing called Stormfront, which is a Nazi creative thing. Right. In this, Stormfront's still created by a Nazi, but she's way more connected to the Ku Klux Klan.
I couldn't get into the comics, so I am interested.
Garth Ennis is a horrible person.
Yeah, I don't like Garth Ennis generally. So
oh, it's a Garth Ennis thing? He's a preacher, right?
Exactly. Yeah, he's a preacher.
He's not a fan.
There's a gleeful nastiness to what he does that I don't appreciate, but it sounds like the show's kind of
this show.
Kenny is super into it.
It's a fascinating show. Season 2 closes out this next Friday.
Oh, speaking of shows that are like happening right now, I keep bringing up that Nexium dude that has Sphinx and Thelxipia behind him. I found out, I did some research. He wrote a book called Thelxipia and Sphinx. I was like, I should get a copy of this. It costs hundreds of dollars on Amazon now. I was not able to find a PDF. So, Healthy Holly all over again. I would love to do a critical fucking reading of an important pop cultural moment text, and it's denied to me because it's a rare and no one wants to contribute to the scholarship. I guess they just want a souvenir of a scandal. He also wrote a book called Odin and Sphinx.
Huh.
Do you know what genre the book is?
I don't. I'm not even sure. I'm assuming they're going to be some kind of like self-help, like hyper, how to be the person you're supposed to be and eliminate all your neuroses and stuff. I'm guessing that it's like that, but I might be wrong.
Did you look on like a torrenting site or Soul Seeker thing?
That's a good. I should look on the Pirate Bay. I didn't.
I find a lot of stuff like that on. Mine is I run Linux, so I don't use SoulSeek, but like the non-brand name version of SoulSeek.
Yeah, SoulSeek is sometimes really good for books. This is like a crazy.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, this is such a crazy person's book, though. I mean, hopefully because there's a documentary and arrests and stuff, people be interested in it, but
like the nerds are on the peer-to-peer things. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Called.
Oh, okay. So this Nexium thing. Okay, now I remember what this whole deal was.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The show's really great because you learn about this people who are breaking away from this cult, but there's kind of this other movie going on that you have to put together yourself about the role of the camera in all of these people's lives. Like, the information they're presenting and the story they're telling is interesting, but it's also really interesting to look at them and how they're living and how they're telling the story and be like, the camera has such a strange role in these people's lives. Like, it's there and they're doing big moments, like the biggest emotional thing going on in their life, they're like keeping a camera on and talking to the camera and recording everything. It's really bizarre.
I'm always really perplexed by people who are willing to participate in that level of like documentary where they're I don't know. I think it's really exciting for some people to just have a camera on all the time.
Yeah.
But that would be a nightmare for me.
I feel like over the course of the show, you can see people having like physical reactions to attention in places that it has nothing to do with the story that's being told, but you can see it. Like you can see these people are like, oh my God, my story about being, brainwashed and abused in this cult just got on New York Times website. And like, there's some really strange relationships to attention that are occurring.
What's the name of that woman? Remini? Is it Leah Remini?
Oh, she's a Scientology person, yeah?
Right.
Oh, Leah Remini. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
she got out of Scientology.
Yeah.
And is that the basis of her career now? That King of Queens isn't happening? Is King of Queens happening? I hope King of Queens is not happening.
No, I don't think that's been on the air for like 10 years.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like you can really see people who are like these like really type A, super motivated people who want to be even better and like don't understand why everything's not working out for them because they know they're these kind of superior, high functioning individuals, and then they join a cult that feeds into that and they get really into it, and then at a certain point they're like, oh shit, I'm in a cult, and then they do that exact same mindset against the cult. Like the people that are breaking out of the cult form another little cult that's doing the same amount of like absolutely insane.
Isn't it the same cycle that we described at the beginning of this conversation with talking about Protestantism versus mysticism and the role of the prosimians? And isn't that the same cycle?
Yeah, it's just like instant one generation with these kind of people. They have the new religion codified and like the new hierarchy like the second they start rebelling.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, especially when you're escaping a cult, I think that's such a difficult process that it sort of necessarily, like the trauma of that experience becomes a really major part of your personality. Like you don't.
Well, and you have to like ultra validate it. It has to be like ultra validated that like this risk that you're taking is like the correct thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
think
sometimes way to fight cult is with cult.
Yeah, I think
and
sometimes
you've already committed in the cult to there being like a right, the idea of there being like a right thing, a right way, and then you carry that, but just like the mode switching.
Yeah, I mean, it's programming and then reprogramming or deprogramming, which I guess is still reprogramming.
Mm-hmm.
So,
it's Pandora's box.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've opened it up, you can only go further. You can't put it back in.
Yeah.
Innocence lost can never be regained.
Oh.
There's a lot of little tiny things in this chapter that I underlined that are like, I don't even know if they connect to anything else, but that just appear to be symbolic. Like minor symbolism happening all throughout this.
Let's talk about it.
One of them I have is like this weird thing he starts thinking about the painting the front of the Mantian.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, I was talking to myself. They almost certainly been painted originally. It might even be possible to find a record of the original designs among the clutter of papers in the attic of the manse. If money could be found for paint and brushes as well. And then it's just this very strange diversion his thoughts take. But clearly it's important because it's so, I don't know,
to me,
so prominent.
It's interesting little bit of characterization for Silk too, because you get to see that Silk is really just focused on improving the mansion, and in a way, I mean, he's kind of, I guess the word I'm going to use is like simple-minded, but that's not exactly what I mean, but he is focused.
Sure.
And
And
he's like,
in his imagination, he doesn't really see the mansion not continuing. That's not really a possibility for him. His mind is
Horns,
dealing with
horns
Peter.
silk.
this thing that he's thinking
Horns
of.
version of silk.
Horns, right. It might even be possible to find a record of the original designs among the clutter of papers in the attic of the manse. Is kind of like Silk's role in his environ, right? Like, he's going to go figure out the original design in this big giant mess of a place people don't go.
Well, it also speaks to if Silk is a great leader, it's because he fills his life with his responsibility to his charge. All Silk thinks about is his responsibility to Mantian and the people of the quarter that the Mantian serves. That's why he's good. He doesn't have any personal desires.
Mm-hmm. When he does, it's for a tomato, and he just tortures himself about having it.
Yeah.
That's this chapter too, right? That's before he gets...
That's the event. But the aftermath then spirals out throughout the entire saga.
You're never gonna forget about them today.
Oh, also, so the driver says to him, "Are you the augur everyone's talking about, Patera? The one that got enlightened?" That's what somebody told me back at the estate.
Yeah.
Did that really happen, or is there like a Trivaganti plan that's like already in effect? Did somebody really tell him that at the place? It seems like who did he did Silk mention being enlightened? He told Blood that, huh?
To Blood, that he did it publicly to Blood, and that's how people started knowing about it. And Blood was interested, so Blood would have distributed that information throughout his organization, I feel.
But how much time has passed since Silk saying that and then being put into this flyer? There wasn't like another thing that happened in the middle between that meeting. Well,
it gave me pause, but Ryan, also consider that when they're driving their flyer, some random guy pushing bricks, I assume, sees Silk and falls to his knees.
Yeah.
So it's not just the driver too. Like, this information has legs.
And then when he gets back, that's when he sees the graffiti, right?
Right.
It's moving fast.
Yeah, it moves real fast.
And
perhaps
Crane
it's an
knows.
emotion.
Crane clearly knows, because in the next chapter, I'm skipping ahead, but when Silk is like, "Will you look on Teasel?" Crane, there's like a moment of something happening in Crane's head where he's clearly like, "Oh, this is good. Oh, this is good. I saved this little kid, and this Calde thing's in the bag."
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, this has begun almost immediately of Silk being enlightened. Like, he went out and told Blood. He's told everyone pretty much that he's met since then, but that's only like 4 or 5 people.
Right.
But it hasn't been a day. He hasn't gone to sleep since being enlightened, right?
Well, it's also kind of crazy because how did this information spread? He just walked up to people and said, "You know what? I was enlightened. I experienced a theophany." And I feel like anybody who hears that would be like, "Yeah, right, buddy." But and Silk even behaves like that's what he expects people to do. But apparently, everybody just believes him.
Well, maybe the population is looking for someone who has been enlightened. You know, that is a yearning within people's minds in this world. You know, like, they're waiting, and when they hear it, like, "Oh, did you hear? The augur was enlightened." You know, like, this is exciting information.
Which implies the existence of a John the Baptist, right?
Yeah, I think that's another really like Protestant vibe. Like, the whole idea with a lot of Protestantism is like, it's gonna happen, you guys. Like, he's coming back.
Well, that's any messianic. That's Catholicism too. You know, like, we like John the Baptist.
It feels like there's less immediacy to that. Like there's the return of Christ as this like very immediate thing, I think, is like a hallmark of a lot of particularly evangelical Protestantism.
Mark, you in the shot right now, you've got really saintly vibes. Well, like a
Every
spinning
time, I was
halo.
gonna say that every time Mark goes into the kitchen or wherever it is with the fan, and there's like it looks like you have like a glowing orb, halo, aura thing. It's happened before. It's happened before, but the last time it happened, we were all having a really important conversation, and I felt it was inappropriate to bring up at the time.
That's
Whereas
all right.
you derailed an important conversation to bring it up because I'm a jackass.
The imminence of Christ's return, though, especially in the early church, is where we get the idea of celibacy from. It's immoral to have children because in a couple of seconds, the end of the world is happening.
Ooh, cute. I like this.
So that's a millennialist kind of trope.
Yeah. Could it be part of Silk's magical powers that he's just incredibly persuasive and people are just like, sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, but I think it's like a classic Wolfe thing where it is kind of magic charisma powers, but there's like a scientific kind of mechanisms working within them.
He was genetically engineered to be a great swordsman and terribly charismatic.
Yeah.
But like it's not just that they're glamored. I feel like part of the way he becomes charismatic is this weird selflessness. Like he's not telling people what Silk is ever, other than I'm an augur, and like speaking in this really general abstract way. People can fill in what they want, and he doesn't fight with anybody. He's always trying to figure out how their goals can be the same. Like there's specific ways he becomes the charismatic superhero.
But more and more, I really think that Silk doesn't have that trait, and that's something that Horn is projecting onto him. And I don't know that it's just because Horn is a fanboy either. I think that Horn, who is writing the book, is creating the character of Silk for a specific purpose. Like we're using Batman or Captain America, or more likely Iron Man, in our own culture for a specific purpose. Or the way
he's trying to sell books.
Huh?
Horn's trying to sell books.
I think that Horn is trying to jumpstart culture on a wilderness planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to have the mystery.
It's like what as Americans we're beginning to embrace manifest destiny and try to be more of a powerhouse in the world. We went to Nathaniel Hawthorne to create a national mythology, and that's where we get the whole I cannot tell a lie, and everybody thought the world was flat until Columbus sailed around it. Like all these things that just aren't true. The existence of Molly Pitcher and Bessie Ross, people who probably we have no historical evidence that they existed. This was a national mythology fabricated to solidify a central power in a place that was specifically made to not be centralized. And I think that's what Horn is doing with Silk. He's trying to make the new planets Robin Hood, King Arthur, Charlemagne.
It's interesting because Charlemagne is depicted as such a terrible, ineffective ruler in most of the poems about him, like all the Roland poems in Orlando. Charlemagne is horrible, like doofus of a king. Arthur is like not bad in Detroit or like dumb, but he's not
existent.
What?
And King Arthur is like, what's the main quest for the Knights of the Round Table? The Holy Grail. What does Arthur do? Sit back?
Yeah, he never does anything in the poems. He sometimes like gets worried and asks somebody to look for someone else. Like that's
and this ties into the idea that this is what collapsed the Merovingian dynasty. The king is supposed to do nothing. He's supposed to sit back, get fat, and fuck. and just be bountiful, because the king and the land are one. The king is the symbol of the land. A bountiful king means that everyone is bountiful. If the king starts doing work symbolically with sympathetic magic, what does that mean? Oh God, we all have to do work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that is so the Merovingian kings just rode around having hunts while old Pepin the Short is back in the palace doing the governmenting, and that allows it so that Pepin the Short can make a deal with the Pope to off the Merovingians and put his son Charles Martel, the new king.
Hell yeah.
But
Charles,
that's like Zeus's role too. Zeus doesn't govern shit. He just makes more babies.
Hey, it's like Trump too, right?
it's exactly like
Trump is just someone who just sits around getting rich. Who the fuck knows what he does?
Which is a complete myth. Trump sits around getting poor.
Yeah. But maintains the illusion of wealth very well.
And
If you paint everything gold,
Oh, it's
Interesting.
anyway.
Are we out of the order yet? Where are we at?
I'm looking for more
Is that-
underlines. Oh, the ashes.
The who?
The ashes of the last were lifeless gray dust without a single gleam. When he's talking about cooking up, he wants to make a fire for the tomatoes. Others spoke of starting a new fire from the embers of the previous one. His own fires never seemed to leave those rumored long-living embers. And I feel like this is a political symbol here. Yeah? Like, this is about this revolution occurring around silk and his revitalization of Viron. Or like, it's not embers from a previous fire that never went out. He's got to build his own fire.
Well, I think that a little bit after he says that, he does restart a fire from the ashes of the previous one, which I would like to point out is what the Phoenix does. And in this way, Silk is taking the Phoenix throne. So I think him saying he can't do it is a projected humility that the facts don't play out. He does do it. He does rekindle the old fire. And in this story, which is an Exodus, that's bad. What you're supposed to do is leave. What you're supposed to do is what Horn actually is ending up doing: leave and go start a new thing. And Silk doesn't do that. He stays. He keeps this thing going, even as giants are ripping it apart.
He doesn't. But how could he leave now?
On a lander,
Whose?
everybody else leaves. But
I don't think he knows that that's an option.
No, but he doesn't know any of this is like he doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah, so he can't just leave.
and I mean, he does eventually find out that it's an option. He's one of the first people that finds out that it's an option.
Right,
Yeah,
but if he left, he has to go through all this. He has to not leave now in order to do things to figure out that it's an option to leave.
Right, but then when he finds out that there's an option to leave, he still doesn't leave.
Okay.
Right?
Like he intends to, right? Or is that? I was really confused about that whole thing. That whole how, whatever. We don't need to talk about it now.
Yeah, this is book 4 talk.
Yeah, I
don't even remember it.
I don't feel.
Have the first time readers in the club gotten through their whole reading yet?
I can't understand what you said.
Sorry, have the first time readers in the group gotten through the whole book yet?
I haven't actually.
I have not.
I kind of fell off a little bit. I needed to read non-Wolf books for a while, but I'm halfway through. I need
Yeah,
to read
I'm still in 3.
Oh, 3 is a place where I stumbled for a while. I feel like.
3 slowed me down pretty hard.
Yeah, but boy howdy, it gets crazy eventually in 3.
Boy howdy.
Well, 4.
Boy howdy, he says.
Boy howdy.
Boy howdy.
I look forward to it. I'm just trapped in the tunnels right now, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
You're
that
in
gets
the dark for a
confusing
long
'cause
time.
It's dark, so you can't tell the difference between anything.
Yeah. A lot of talking in the tunnels.
With a nude woman.
Tartarus and Ak, though, that's an interesting bit. But again, this is book 3 talk, and we're in book 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh my God. We'll never get out.
Have you finished it, Jen? Or
Yeah,
you've
this
read
is
it
my
before?
second. This is my second.
Yeah. Have you finished it on this round?
No. That's why everything's confusing to me again.
Yeah.
I'm in the second book right now.
I'm trying to. Go ahead, Ryan.
What?
Oh, I was just saying that I feel like I need to start keeping charts, like all the things that Silk promises to sacrifice, but also times that Orib only says one word.
What can you list some examples of interesting one-word Orib sentences?
Well, in this chapter, he only says one word one time, and it's when he says "me."
Yeah.
And it's really cool.
Yeah, I like that movie.
It really stands out that it's not 2 words, and so I want to make a note to myself now. Start writing down how many times does he only do one word.
Wait a minute.
Show yourself, or I'll do it.
He says another one-word thing in this chapter.
Which one?
He says "witch."
Witch,
Oh yeah, witch. That's another really good one.
Yeah.
He's talking about
Rose.
Rose, yeah.
Yep.
A mean old witch.
What? I mean, he's already the wisecracking sidekick.
Yeah, what a Disney character.
Really, truly.
Well, and maybe I'm thinking about this because I watched Hocus Pocus last night, but like, you know, there's this idea of witches that there are these figures who steal youth. You know, like they capture the youth of typically children, but
Oh, shit.
I think in this case, Rose, you know, she's like this. She's mechanically and biologically sustained, and she's like these multiple people, and she, you know, her life has been extended indefinitely by this kind of assimilation of other humans.
So mint marble Rose are very kind of cartoonishly maiden mother crone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, they're a definite triple goddess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're really like he's pushing it. It's so there. It's right on the top.
Oh, now I want to start thinking about them in relation to the triple goddess in the new sun of Bird, Skuld, and Verdanti. Well, I'll have to think about that later. But so it's interesting because, I mean, when Orib says witch, it's after Maytera was hangdogged for that tomato piece.
Mm-hmm.
And Silk's like, oh god, the stain of evil might soil my spirit throughout all of it.
Now, is he being serious
and
or
then
he
Orib
being
is just like witch about Rose? Just called her name.
I mean, I think Silk is being a little bit, I don't know, he's overstating it comedically, right?
He's being very, very melodramatic about it.
Mm-hmm.
The stain of evil might soil his spirit throughout all eternity. Over a tomato? Come on. He's joking
I mean-
there.
Sounds like
you could-
Protestant to me.
Yeah, I don't know if he is joking because he's really in this zone where like everything is carrying so much importance because it's all a part of this synchronistic happening where that is ordained by a true God. So I don't know. I kind of take Silk at face value most of the time.
Do we have other examples of Silk making jokes? I feel like he's not much of a joking guy.
Yeah.
I think he enjoys other people's jokes more than his own. He's not humorous. He's good natured. He's not a stick in the mud, but he
doesn't make jokes. Is all.
This kind of goes back to the idea that Silk is simple, in that he's not clever. He doesn't. I mean, we watched the whole book. His internal monologue is struggling to put two and two together. He doesn't connect facts, which is what you need to make jokes.
Yeah.
You know, he's not an actor. He's a reactor.
You got to be one step ahead to make a punchline work. And he's always just catching up. He's always catching up with his own thoughts. He's too busy autistically, like, figuring out what he thinks to, like, do the sidestep around to make a joke.
Well, and he can't instigate anything. He is not a mover. He is moved by the outsider.
He's pushed.
Yeah, he has an amazing inertia to you know, he just doesn't. He's not a catalyst in some ways, or a reluctant one, anyhow. A cat's paw.
Or a very pure one, in that, like, he'll be moved by anything, so whatever eventually moves him is the, like, strongest impulse or whatever, right?
Well, it's interesting to think of that as purity.
It's like receptivity, you know, like he's very open to influence.
Yeah.
Is that pure?
I think it's innocent or naive in some ways.
Uh,
I guess in the
But
sense, he doesn't. He's not. He's not more receptive to something than something else. Anything can be plugged into Silk, and he'll figure out a way to connect it to the gods and his mission.
well, he'll struggle to figure it out.
Yeah, but he'll treat them all equally.
Mm-hmm.
Any input will be. I guess that's the thing I'm driving at by calling him pure. Is that, like,
it's like a blank hard drive.
yeah,
He's ready to get written on.
Yeah, maybe he's just been awaiting his instructions to be a little robot boy. Like, not literally, but you know what I mean. He's been waiting to be, he's like a sleeper agent. He's been waiting to be sprung into action. So he's just been like, I don't know. Yeah, this seems fine. Well, you know what I mean?
This makes me think of the syzygy that I've been seeing between Auk and Silk, where, like, Auk is the real hero of this story. Auk is the person who's leading people off the planet. Auk is the true son of the old Kaldi. Silk is a thing that the Kaldi bought to be made into a tool. You know, Silk is a sword. He's not a swordsman.
Yeah, yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
Isn't
Yeah, he's
referred
awaiting.
to?
He is the true sleeper agent is Auk.
He's
and-
referred to as a weapon, right? At some point.
He is.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think that's like explicitly stated.
And Silk as weapon is activated by the guy whose name means sword. Right? He doesn't think that he can fight until he goes to Master Xiphias, and Master Xiphias is like, not only can you fight, you can fight with either hand and better than I can. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, Silk's a tool.
He is a tool, yeah.
I'm glad we can finally all agree on that.
It's funny in that Nexium cult, the dude Keith who runs it refers to things as technology that are kind of, I don't know, to me were interesting that was the term, because what he's talking about is like a method of thinking about yourself so you can do what you want to do and not be hampered by inhibitions or weakness or something. But that's referred to within that cult as technology, like the technology I've developed, or I'm allowing this person to use my technology for this purpose. And in that definition, a lot more things in this book I feel like could be considered technology than besides what is explicitly technology.
I like to use technology in that way too.
I think it's
the massive technology.
a really good way to think about
Plug for
things
nodding.
that aren't necessarily that we think of technology, like a bionic glove or whatever.
Yeah, we have it really closely mapped to gadget or device in our
Like,
culture.
it's technology. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and we're watching the technology of our society break down much like the world right now.
Yeah.
Right? And because of a cabal of pro-Simeon saboteurs led by Mitch McConnell and Steve Bannon.
And I mean, technology, what the root is techne, which is like making or doing. Like it like technology doesn't refer to an object, it refers to a function.
Right.
Do you guys think that the plastic eating enzyme will become a main player in our lives before we die?
Yes.
It could be.
I mean, that is, to me, is scarier than the atomic bomb.
Because you think that the plastic eating enzyme is going to eat up all our tools?
It's going to be like a Grey Goo thing, or...
Oh, just that it will be weaponized. It will absolutely 100% be a weapon. And then, like, what does that mean? What is... deploying that as a weapon, what would it look like? It seems like you would, instead of killing a population, you would destroy their entire means that they are like providing for themselves and surviving. You'd cause, like, they'd end up eating each other and killing each other if you like successfully plastic enzymed their country. It sounds grislier than exploding or being irradiated. It's like the social consequence of a plastic eating enzyme running wild in a political population.
Well, to look at that from a different direction, though, plastic is shit.
Yeah, plastic.
All of our
I was thinking that too.
Yeah,
all of our things that are made out of plastic are absolute garbage, and contributes to us treating each other like absolute garbage because we think of everything as disposable. If we have to go back to making things out of metal and wood and have
pine needles
and have them be things that last and are useful and that we care about, it would have ripple effects out to the rest of our culture, and we would stop being such dickish bastards.
Yeah, like enzyme could be like a cleansing fire.
I agree. I just, that fire, that part where people on fire is going to be so grisly. It's like, it's tantalizing to imagine the new height of grisliness we will have snuck in there when no one was even expecting it.
I mean, we're definitely at the leading edge of that, whether it's a plastic enzyme or something else. I mean,
yeah, you can do the same thing with the internet.
With a what?
By turning the internet off.
Yeah, EMP, maybe electromagnetic pulse, knocks out all of the radio capabilities, Wi-Fi, everything, phones all down.
Everything.
That one, I feel like that one to me is so much more preferable because I feel like you can, I don't know, you can still rely on buildings and stuff like that you can hide in with your friends.
I mean, I think with any of this, like it's not like we're without models for living in a culture that doesn't have those things.
Right, but the transition is going to be insane. The transition from like plastic is in every single thing, every part of life has a plastic part of it, to like, okay, we don't have plastic anymore, we can't. That jump is going to be absolutely brutal.
You know who thinks about this all the time? Kevin Costner. Waterworld, The Postman.
Right.
I was just thinking about The Postman the other day and about Tom Petty.
Yeah.
Mayor of Bridge City.
Yeah. His part in that movie is the best part of the movie.
I really liked that movie, Postman, but I haven't seen it since I was young.
I've never seen it.
The book's real good.
Who wrote it?
David Brin.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that those were related.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute, Mr. Postman. That song plays many times in that movie.
Does it? I don't remember that.
Oh, Joseph says some stuff. I do wonder how much natural cleverness he, that's Silk, has versus the advantage of wisdom through shriving people and learning what drives people in that way.
So that makes him, but that's still kind of him being a sponge.
Yeah.
You know? Or a mirror. You know, he's reflecting or assimilating the things that are around him.
He knows how to put himself in somebody's shoes because he's heard them like explaining themselves how their mind works in a private way.
I don't know. Again, maybe I'm just overcorrecting in my previous adoration of Silk. I don't know how much Silk knows how to do that rather than he just does it.
Oh, I agree with you. 100%. He just does it.
Yeah, it is still not a cleverness.
It's a passive faculty.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It has a result that is similar to cleverness, but it's not getting in him through his own cleverness.
And actually, this is why Silk is the one who hears the outsider, because he is supremely receptive.
I've been thinking a lot lately about how I need to be dumber.
Well, that is a mistake. I don't think that you should, I think don't confuse dumbness for receptivity or empathy.
Well, I do think that I could probably do a better job of being dumb than being smart, so I should try my hardest to be dumb.
I don't think there's such a there's such a thing as doing a good job of being dumb.
Well, I think dumbness. I think that. There's a difference between being receptive and empathetic and being. I feel like people who are dumb are not receptive. There's like an obtuseness and a resistance that's inherent in.
If we're looking at the word dumb to mean mute,
right?
Perhaps
no.
Less think more.
I mean unintelligent.
I think that's a good idea, Ryan.
You might be talking about emptiness more than dumbness, Ryan. Like maybe you're talking about like clearing out some of the internal shelves, and like letting there be space and emptiness, and people who are like that, whose lives aren't full of, I don't know, like friends and activity and meaning and stories and whatever. People whose brains aren't overactive like my brain is, and like your brains are, surely, who are all smart. Those people have like a different approach to reality, But oftentimes it seems to me that there might even be benefits to that sort of what I would call like maybe like emptiness a little bit.
Emptiness is a good word for it. I like that. Yeah.
I would suggest to go back to the Tao Te Ching, which is you're not being dumb when you're emptying yourself, when you're meditating, when
right.
This is the whole thing of Lent, right? Preparing a space in yourself, egoless, but that's not dumb. And it's a mistake that dumb people make. Identify dumbness as that positive trait.
If we're talking about ignorance, I think ignorance is unestimable, generally speaking.
Yeah,
but maybe not. I don't know. There might be less spiritual ache.
I think it's like more wise to be going into things without preconceived notions, which I think is what you're talking about. And it's not good to equate intelligence and like the concept of like innocence, etc., because it doesn't make you stupid to be like unknowable, not know about something, or to like approach it like it's something new every time you come to it. And yeah, like if that's not intelligence, like level of intelligence at all, because you could find that it's just a quality that has nothing to do with intelligence at all. Like you can find that at any level of intelligence.
I have an instinctual kind of like reaction to that whole concept of it. It just like feels very patriarchal to me as a concept. Like that orientation to like intellectual intelligence and the like just like dumb smart, like I don't know, I definitely, I don't know,
it's factionalism.
I just feel like emptying yourself is a positive thing, but then when you empty yourself out and refuse, like you empty yourself out to allow life to flow through you, and that's not dumbness, but emptying yourself out and then not letting anything in, like keeping yourself empty instead of being a pipe that a conduit for experience, you arrest experience. That's a problem.
Well, and it's a problem with
maybe
orientation.
you're just using dumb semantically differently than I have any understanding of it. But what were you saying, Jen?
It's an orientation to like a feminine state. I mean, like receptivity is like the feminine, like the
right.
The in motion is feminine and the out motion is masculine.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, having like equating the kind of like emptiness and receptivity to like dumbness feels like inherently patriarchal.
Hell yeah, you did it.
Yeah.
Did what?
I like made that very explicit.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I feel like I'm not going to be able to see it in a different way now that you've expressed it in terms of the yang, the yin receptivity. I don't know. It seems very vivid to me to go from emptiness into that. I still think I would do a good job of being dumb though.
Maybe that's what you're doing. Maybe that's what you're doing right now.
In a way that I'm unable to do a good job of being smart.
These terms are not that useful, Smart.
It's not.
Dumb.
Yeah, it's very.
They're dumb.
I think he's trolling right now.
Yeah,
they're dumb terms.
I definitely am having a problem of, or I perhaps am having a problem of feeling that people who are into their dumb, who are doing a good job of being dumb, are really being stubborn.
It's like my dad. It's like my dad.
Right. I mean, I don't know your dad. I don't mean to agree with that.
That's right.
Well,
but you can just believe when you can just take my word for it.
That he's real stubborn.
He's like sort of. It's like he's willfully ignorant, basically. I mean, like
my mom hates when
my sister and brother and I are always like talking about how disturbed we are by like the events in the world, and he just like he has these world views that are entirely theoretical, that have no bearing in actual reality, like the way that his concepts of the way the world works play out in reality. He has no.
That's such a classic dad stance.
Like, yeah. But then when we are all like pretty rigorous about thinking about these things, and so then it's like he still he refuses to take the time to like have any backing for any of his arguments about the way the world is, but then demands that his opinion be held as consequential as the rest of our opinions about it. You know,
sounds
like
like a
he
middle-aged
demands to be like
Dad.
taken intellectually seriously, even though there's no rigor in his thought whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean that's like especially. I mean I have that experience with my own dad, and I think that that's something you see a lot with people who grew up in prosperous times. Or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like the people who took the bait for Reaganomics are are those people who are making those arguments now. Is because it's like, oh well, you know, I mean, like things were going great in the '80s, and this is the idea that we had, and there's not a whole lot of willingness to kind of look beyond that period of prosperity that kind of happened for a lot of reasons that weren't Reaganomics. You know, there's no context to a lot of it. There's a lot of like, it's a very short-sighted kind of thing that ends up getting stuck to very stubbornly.
Yeah, well, because the further you dig in the worldview premise, like the further you take the conversation, the emptier it gets. Like there's no, you just hit a void in the bottom that's not filled with anything.
It's not informed. It's not informed by knowledge. It's not informed by like even a moral compass. It's just sort of like
feelings.
Yeah, it really. Yeah,
but
I feel like
there's a
this is the
refusal to
case.
admit that it's feelings. That I think that's the kicker.
I think people born between the 50s and 60s, or you know, around that time, definitely share. Yeah, that kind of psychological machinery.
Yeah,
I got him to admit that he was intellectually copping out. But it's like you can get him to these places and then it doesn't change anything later. Like you can get him to agree with you on a specific instance of why your worldview makes more sense than his. You can get him to agree on a specific case,
right,
but it does nothing to the underlying machinery. The next conversation, or you end up having the next conversation, you have the same argument again, where you're like, we agreed at the end. You agreed that like the thing I said was like more right than the thing you said. But then you still have to start over. Every conversation you have to start over. It's like it didn't even fucking happen.
Isn't this why people should always try to change the world with art instead of with politics? Just get around, like, art goes around all of that.
Yeah.
But in order for that to work, though, I mean, it might just be like some you can't teach old dogs new tricks, like we just have to wait for all those people to die so we can take the levers of power kind of situation, like maybe trying to focus on anyone's mind over the age of like 65 is just a waste of everyone's time is where I'm starting to get to on that topic.
That's not unreasonable.
But it's like,
I feel that's a dangerous way
my
to be.
argument to the art thing is that kind of like only works when the people receiving the art are capable of critical thinking. Like you have to, like, otherwise it just hits a brick wall. Like there's no.
I don't know about that. I think the part of the problem, and I'm going to say some things that I won't 100% agree with here, but I think the part of the problem is when people are using art to do something that they want.
Okay.
Then the people who are not part of whatever cluster of identity you have, that's not going to work for them. When you stop thinking of art being a thing that, like, my art serves me and serves my purposes, when you are serving the purposes of your art, when you are a conduit for the muse, you make something that is truly inspirational. And it's not going to be such a struggle to get someone outside of your frame of reference to be inspired by it as well, because it is bigger than you.
Yeah. It's about life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I jumped right over the idea of art, like in the pamphleteering sense, in the like, we will demonstrate right living by an explicit artistic depiction of right living.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, I was jumping over that because I know none of us really go for that, but
Well, but
think-
it's hard to jump over that because we make such Apollonian art now.
Yep.
You know, like even I was just talking about how good The Boys is. I think that it is propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to find art that is not propaganda right now. I think we are too considered in our making of art.
Well, anything I think that's true for anything that's like that makes it outside of its immediate like community sphere. Like anything that's like gone beyond like anything that's pierced the threshold of like larger society, I think that's going to be true for.
Yeah. Because there's financial like physics to it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get to that platform without supporting that platform's need for an insatiable need for constant growth of money.
Well, and so this is a capitalist problem. A truly inspired and inspirational piece of art is not profitable because it's for everyone. And that makes it worthless in terms of capitalism.
Art is mixed in with politics these days. I mean, maybe even more so than ever.
I mean, that's what propaganda is. Propaganda is the aestheticization of politics, or the whatever, the politic making of aesthetics.
It suborns the muse to the service of Apollo.
Yeah, which
and it takes what was once a triple goddess and splits it threefold into 9, diminished.
But also the best way to get grants. If you want a grant, you do a didactic, very easy to parse piece of artwork. And
that's why fuck grants and fuck people who I recently offended my mother with a post on Facebook about like fuck artists who are looking for awards. All you're doing is finishing your homework. Like fuck that. That is the province of critics, not the province of artists.
I could see it if you're just scamming so that you don't have to have a day job. I feel like that's fine.
I don't know,
but not if you're too earnest about it. I'm just saying I'm not saying that's what most of those people are doing. I'm just saying I could see a person doing that.
I mean, I apologize to anybody who's watching that I'm isolating or alienating right now.
I think that the grant people they need a little bit more of a ribbing than they get.
Oh, I agree with that, but I still feel bad if I'm the one who's ribbing them.
It is interesting and notable that there is like a grant class among artists, you know, and I mean, when you look at their art, you're like, that's interesting to me. That it's not as good, you know. It's like
in Baltimore, there's like
it's gone to me how many people with trust funds are also the people who get grants.
Right.
How many times they use that grant to just preserve some art that they think needs to be preserved.
I actually had an interesting interaction with someone who's likely a grant artist, a Baltimore grant artist, yesterday, where I was selling a table from Craigslist. And this person who I don't think knew that I knew who she was, because she's never paid any attention to me, bought the table from me. And in my neighborhood, which is a pretty standard working / lower middle class neighborhood in Baltimore, there were a couple of people down the street who were having an argument. And she was so upset by it. She was really upset by it. And she was like, oh, you know, if that happened in my neighborhood, somebody would get shot. She like insisted that I stay with her while she loaded the stuff into her car. it was jarring how racist she was being about this situation. And then at the end she was like, I feel so sorry for those people, just so much anger. And I was like, it's probably good to let it out, and she's like, I really disagree, and so does neuroscience.
Wow.
Man, at that point,
we got a grant maker right here.
I was like, please leave. Like this is we
Wow.
do not need to keep having this conversation because I'm just gonna get pissed off.
Ooh.
That's such
So
a
I'm curious though, Mark. She said in her neighborhood that would result in a shooting.
Yes.
Do we have an idea of what kind of neighborhood that is? Because that's the only part that like throws me off a little bit from this whole thing.
My guess is that she lives in Station North, or
okay.
somewhere in that zone. Which I mean, like shootings happen, but they're not random shootings of white artists who are buying a table.
Right.
Like they're that interpersonal conflict that was happening had nothing to do with her. And she absolutely felt the need to insert, like she wasn't inserting herself into that, but like psychologically, she was a part of that. Like
and sharing a morally superior take on it with you.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I feel so sorry for those people with their feelings and their fighting.
I would have had to ask her what neuroscience had to say about her feelings.
Yeah, exactly. The evocation of the unassailable facts of neuroscience to support her not having to hear these real people's actual lives.
Yeah. And the reason why it's so foreign to her is because she's never fought about anything, because she's never wanted for anything, nor been around anyone who has wanted for anything, and so therefore has never had a need or cause to ever fight or express anger.
This is ignorance.
When we're not recording, I'll say the name. She's never going to watch this, I'm sure. But like,
it can also be that like she's like, some people are like, they've never had. Some people just don't have a healthy relationship with anger, and I think that's like a really important thing to have.
Absolutely.
And some people can only see conflict and anger in the most negative ways, and like that's the actual poison, is not letting yourself express anger. Like those two people, whoever they were having a completely normal interaction for neighbors to have. Like it's so normal.
I mean, like, I won't lie, like it got pretty heated. I was keeping an eye on it.
It happened. You know what I mean?
But at the same time, like it's better to just have it out and maybe say some stuff that you shouldn't have said and be embarrassed about it later, and like learn something from a situation. Then push.
It sounds like the subtext there was that it was black people having an argument.
Yes.
Is that right? So there's like that whole element.
I mean, I think that was a significant part of her discomfort.
Yes, absolutely. If she lived in like Hamden or something, she would see something like that and be like, whatever.
Right.
Or maybe she wouldn't. Like maybe, I don't know. There's a lot of things that could be going on. Like she could have her own like fucked up relationship with other people's anger or whatever. But like, come the fuck on. Like you need to know where like you said. Not necessarily she was inserting herself or thought that something was going to happen, but she just thinks, like, everything's so out of control. It's just like, you have, like, oh my god, everything's so out of control, and I could be, like, murdered for no reason. Like, so many people have this feeling, like, oh my god, I could just be fucking murdered when someone else is mad for no fucking reason.
That's something that I've seen a lot in some particular like Baltimore artists, where it's like anger is something that happens to me. Like anger is something that I'm subjected to, or like there are artists who I've seen be like really like their art is about empathy or whatever, but their understanding of empathy just seems to be people understanding how they feel. And without any real interest in reaching out and understanding how other people feel. And I think, and I don't know that that's necessarily symptomatic of like getting artist grants or something, but I think when you get this sort of like, when a government arts organization or something like bestows this this money on you to make your art, to do this thing, then I think that it's sometimes people get to this headspace where it's like, oh, like this thing that I'm thinking is now like ordained, and like I can say it and believe it in this big way, and I don't have to be all that reflective about it anymore because I've been given approval to believe what I'm saying.
That ability to get into people's heads is like something that always impresses me about Gene Wolfe too. Like always. Like, for example, so the Tomato Gate is the reason why it's so interesting to us as like a little episode in these books is that not I mean it tells so much about Silk and his relationship with the others, but it also is this moment where Gene Wolfe really like captures the extreme emotion of that moment that most American people could not identify with. You know, like no one gives a shit about 2 slices of tomato in such like a deep way that like, you know, really affects them over time. But you would if you were like in a pretty impoverished situation where, you know, you only ate a few slices of tomato and a piece of crusty bread a day. And Gene Wolfe's imagination was able to reach that place. You know,
I had to go to the MVA this week, and the zip car I took had XM radio in it. So I went to the comedy stations, and there was the dude had a Chinese accent for sure. I think he's from China and is doing stand-up in America because there's a very strong Chinese accent. Last name was Chiang. I forget the first name. But he had this whole bit that was amazing about how America is a land of abundance and that people that grow up here have no idea what it's like to come from other countries. And he does this whole thing about napkins and about how you go someplace in America and they give you 60 napkins and then you eat your meal and you end up throwing 100 napkins away. The abundance here is so crazy. It's broken reality. You could just make it rain napkins wherever you want. You go in a place, get 20 napkins, don't even buy anything. Like, he does this beautiful whole illustration of America through our absolute just indifference to napkins.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, it was powerful stuff.
I think that's actually a really napkins in particular are like a really wonderful illustration of that. But from what Tim said, which is the 3 finger thing, Tim, about the tomatoes, is that you can scale that situation depending on people's situation, and I think what you said still holds true. So I feel it's a couple of tomatoes, but maybe in my situation, I have maybe one of you is at my house, and I have 1 beer, and I just decide to drink the beer, and I don't really say anything about it, and it would sort of be I don't even say it's my last beer, and I don't offer you one. That's kind of the same situation. But I think what you're still saying is true, is that we would still do it. We would still do those things.
Yeah.
In some situation, it's really still, we wouldn't think twice about doing something super rude and thoughtless in front of somebody.
Yeah. It's also an interesting scene because it also illustrates how when you live together with someone for a long time, how your behaviors and actions on a more minute scale start to take on elevated significance to the people around you, and your relationship deepens and that's a moment where the eating of a tomato becomes a little negotiation in a way, and when you live with people, over time, you do develop these sort of subtextual, sub-vocal, you're not talking about it, these relationships of behavior.
They knew exactly what was going on. He could read her.
Right.
And knew that she was oh man, I could really go for some tomatoes right now.
Right.
2 slices, you could easily give me 1 slice.
She knows that Silk will feel guilty about not giving her a slice. She's hungry. Hey, Silk, can I take that for you? And he breaks, he's like, no, I'll hold on to this. Thank you. It's like, and the significance of that there, it just like speaks volumes about this relationship. They're roommates, they've built up their own way of communicating here.
And there's a bitterness about that I think you only see in that kind of like roommate sort of situation.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of that little scene of her sniffing the air and like kind of making these little excuses not to leave. It's almost like a Jack Vance scene done in a Dogma 95 naturalistic style. Where, like in Jack Vance, people would be jockeying over a magical cape or like the rights to mine in a swamp, but in here it's just about a fucking tomato, and nobody's really trying to play their hand like too quickly.
Yeah. That's great.
Politely being horrible to someone and trying to put the best face on it as possible. Because she's not being a saint here either. She is definitely trying to get some tomatoes that she just walked in and saw.
Well, now though,
she probably smelled them.
Yeah.
To that end, I'd like to speak as a person who's been in the Rose position, where like I've definitely been in a place where I'm hanging out with wealthy people, and I was a person who was so poor that they were hungry all the time, and I would go to bar trivia nights with those people, and buy the small thing that I was able to buy, and that only thing that I had intended to buy, and they would buy extravagant amounts of food, and like I don't want to ask them for their food. That's not what I'm looking to do, but I can't. I just physically can't disguise how hungry I am, and so then they are like, "Go ahead, have it," and I have to say no. I don't want to take your food, even though I definitely do. I don't know how much of that is going on with Rose. That like.
I mean, this situation's slightly different though, because it's not a have and have not kind of thing going on between the two of them, right?
Breakfast right now. She just hasn't had breakfast yet. She's about to have a bigger meal. Like one fucking green tomato is going to make her more hungry.
That's another interesting aspect of it, is that they're about to enjoy this huge breakfast, right?
Well, the breakfast is probably meager. I'm sure it's
probably meager, but I mean,
she's about to have the
adequate.
breakfast. That's true, right? Am I just making that up? Maybe I'm making that up. But I thought that they said
no. Yeah, they go out and eat outside. I think. Well, I don't know.
At least there's bread and butter, right? They described that. So,
Connor, did they really say, "Go on, have some potato skins"?
Oh, it was a crab pretzel.
But that voice that you said it in, they didn't say it like that, did they?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, that is. In my head, I was thinking, "Oh, he must have heard it like that." But surely no one he knows would say it like that. Who?
Right. That sucks.
Definitely, it was definitely a like. If you're going to just stare at their salivating in it, fucking take it.
Okay, that's crossing a whole different line than I feel like it comes up in this Rose and Silk situation.
It was uncomfortable.
That's weird. That's very strange.
Yeah. I mean, if you're someone who, for a crab pretzel ain't no thing to buy, like myself, for example, like you genuinely have to like think that. I mean, it's like it doesn't matter. You can't attach that much significance to the crab pretzel. People who do are assholes, right? Like,
when you
I'm not saying. I mean, for example, if I was like, yeah, I would just be like, oh yeah, no, I'm gonna eat this. Like this is mine. I bought it. Like like. That I feel like that is a fair thing to say, right? Like you could just be like, "Oh no, yeah, I want to eat the whole thing. I'm really hungry right now, and I bought it for myself." That would have been fine.
Yeah, you say, "I didn't eat before this. I need to eat now." You tell a story about it, and you tell it like, I need to eat this whole thing myself because if I drink and don't eat this, I'm gonna be fucked up. Like you can tell a story about it.
Right.
Everyone understands that story.
But being like, okay, you can have it,
and I hadn't asked for it. I just was looking at it.
I'm glad you don't hang out with them anymore.
Yeah, me too.
That's not something I want people to have to endure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think Silk was acting like that. I don't think he was being like, he wasn't being mean, but he did eat it in front of her. But like, come on, he's been fucking riding a donkey. He killed a bird. He probably had
Right.
Like, he needs to eat, man. Like, he's hungry.
I don't think he's being mean. I really don't think he's unjustified in this situation. I think that, you know, Rose is trying to creep up on this situation and then, you know, take advantage and grab some tomato. I think she knows I think she thinks there's a good chance he's gonna hand over that tomato.
And it's already like one tomato down that was eaten, another one that was bored into and has bird saliva all over it. His dream of these tomatoes has already been like crushed in half.
Now, is she also concerned that he's eating breakfast independently?
Oh yeah, probably.
You know, like that he's doing his own eating. He may not join them for their breakfast, which she probably relies upon to get information from him, which today is a very significant time because a lot of shit is going down in Mansion World. I mean,
I think I think she's laying intentional guilt.
Yeah.
I think she's not above laying intentional guilt. I think that's totally within character bounds.
And she loves to make Silk squirm just because she liked Pike, and Silk can't replace him.
So she's just drawing it out. Like, she knows he's hungry, and she's like, "All right, how long can we let this go?"
Yeah, fucking.
She's kind of a tax man here. She's kind of a tax man, just like by virtue of us both being here, you owe me this. You owe me part of whatever it is.
Like the Beatles song?
I suppose so. I don't know any words to that song other than Taxman.
Same.
Taxman.
1 for you, 19 for me.
I'm the tax man.
Yeah, he says it like that. I remember that part.
Man.
Song, that's like the best ever song that is just a very rich person whining about paying taxes.
Yeah.
Well, we wouldn't have a country if it wasn't for that. That's the whole reason we have this country is because rich people didn't want to pay tax. Because the dudes making money here didn't want to have to pay taxes back to England. That's the entire reason for the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get it twisted.
Yeah, it sucks. It's stupid. People who didn't want to pay taxes have been ruining the world for centuries. What the fuck is wrong?
I mean, it is a fundamental breaking of the obvious truth that if you want more, you have to take more than you give. And if you want the most, you have to take the most and give the least. Mm-hmm. And then we have it all wired into this cool myth about like that this is how you know who has succeeded and who has value as a
meritocracy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But our foundational myth.
Oh, I was reading Hildegard de Bingen the other day, and she said an awesome thing, amidst many insane things that are really...
Hildegard rules.
She does rule. One of these things she said was incredible, is that like the pride of a devil says that you can start anything you want because you can finish anything you start. And I was like, that is an incredibly awesome way of describing like Musk or Bezos. Like, I can start anything I want because I have the power to finish anything I start. And then that makes, that justifies what you've done because it was a success.
It's very Machiavellian.
Yeah, she's in 1200s, I think, is the century. The 13th century, I think she's writing. And is just so pissed at privileged people, which she is one of. She's a very rich woman from a lot of money. But
intelligent people tend to be pissed at privileged people.
Yeah, I really love that definition of this like demonic pride. Like, I can do this. I'm justified in doing this because I know I'll be able to do it because I'm that great.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have Facebook, and like entirely from that thinking. And they're still. Did you hear that they are like pushing back? There's some documentary that's talking about how, collecting all the different data about how algorithms manipulate people and interviewing people who've done studies about it, and Facebook like made an official response because it was so high up on the Netflix popularity of the week chart. This documentary.
What's
I haven't watched that.
What? Social Dilemma, yeah. I haven't seen it, but I was interested to see that Facebook like made an official rebuttal, which seems like
what's their rebuttal?
That it's one-sided and that they don't actually manipulate people, and that they were sensationalizing the truth in order to make a popular Netflix thing. It seems so weird. Like, why would you, if you're as big as Facebook, why disavow something critical of you? That seems like it can only contribute to people questioning Facebook.
Well, also, does Facebook know about how President Trump got elected?
Oh, what do you?
I think they're aware.
Well, Facebook was used to manipulate a lot of people into the reality tunnel where they would elect President Trump. Like, Facebook was instrumental in getting Trump elected.
True, but also I think, like, it was instrumental because it was there and people had the goal of doing that. They would have. I don't think Trump could have been prevented by not having Facebook. Facebook was just one of the many tools that were used to get Trump, like, to be the reality.
Sure, I'm just saying, in light of their rebuttal, are they not aware of of the role they did play?
Oh, I think that they've made, diplomatic admissions and apologies of like, we're reviewing, they're constantly doing the like, we're reviewing our policy, we've been looking at what's happening, we're moving forward, we're going to be better, and when our scientists figure out how to be better.
There's a lot of right now on Facebook that I only look at Facebook periodically, but every time I do, there's like a big thing about voting at the top, where they try to like be like, hey, register to vote. Like, remember, you got to vote. Or like Instagram does it too, which is owned by Facebook. Although Instagram seems to think that I'm registered to vote in Florida, and there's this, it's like there's Facebook, I think, is
because your bikini selfies.
I think they're trying to compensate this past of like letting like Russian misinformation get spread through their platform by just like kind of pushing this like, oh, you guys just have to vote, which is
every single election that I like. We see very clearly the idea that, look, if you vote, then you're good. There's nothing really more you can do, and if you've done that, you've done all you can do. You go back to sleep. 4 years, you can do your part again.
But at the same time, don't you all kind of think that, I mean, it's not really Facebook's job to like be the information referee, though? Like, people should be able to do a better job at assessing the information within this new sphere of learning information. Because then you start to get into like some weird territory, like, well, if Facebook is deciding what's the real information, I mean, now I feel like we feel pretty good about that because we kind of have clear definitions of what's real or not. But like in the future, those lines might become blurrier, and people are like, well, Facebook has to control what information we get, and it's like,
I think a lot of
it is controlling what information we get with their algorithm.
I think the issue is not like how we're using the power. The issue is that the power exists, and that what are we getting in exchange for allowing that power to exist? Like, Facebook's size and ubiquity is, even if we're turned to good, would always have the capacity to be turned to evil the next day or turned to bad. It's like, and the only people that are really benefiting from it are people who are doing, like business far away from us and never see us or any of the other users on Facebook. Like, the only way forward, or the only progressive way out of a situation with Facebook, is no monoliths. Like, the monolith itself is the problem, not the way that person X or Y is using the monolith.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to this discussion about platforming and who's like you don't necessarily want to give a platform, like it's this difference between free speech and like anybody's allowed to say what they want to say, even if it's virulently racist, but these businesses or organizations or people or whatever don't necessarily have to give them the platform to say that kind of thing. But then that puts this big onus on these corporations that are not like they don't benefit by deplatforming anybody other than maybe getting some good press. But ultimately, like their business is people sharing their information on this platform. So even if it is terrible, it only benefits Zuckerberg or whatever, because it doesn't matter what the information is. It's the fact that it is information being shared. So there's no.
I feel like though also this shit only goes in a right wing direction. Like if there was like a foreign entity trying to like propagandize people in 2016 into being Sanders voters, they would have shut that shit down. Like because ultimately Trump is still like good for Facebook. Like
Trump is definitely way better for Facebook.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So like I feel like I don't know. There's just like a weird one-sidedness to the whole conversation because like you're never gonna deplatform. You're never gonna like worry about people electing someone who's not a threat.
Case in point is TikTok. Like TikTok is a Chinese-owned platform that was used by American teenagers to basically troll the president, and it gets used as a tool, a leftist tool or at least liberal tool to throw a wrench in the right-wing machine. And that happened, and then immediately the Trump administration tries to get rid of TikTok. And that's which isn't to say that like the Chinese ownership of American information isn't something that's potentially an issue, but like the actual impetus for trying to ban that platform was its utility as a left-wing like tool. So I mean I think that's what we're seeing. Whereas like Facebook never, nobody was ever like we should get rid of Facebook because it got used in this way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like how we are only the U.S. imperial state is only going to depose left governments. Like they're not going to do a coup on fucking Saudi Arabia or the Philippines or whatever.
Yeah, Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, because those people play ball with just straight up money. I mean, you could buy off any right-wing dictator. You just pay them, do what you want.
That's a main challenge that leftist governments have faced the whole time, ever since the Russian Revolution, and no one applies that into their assessments when they're talking about how communism fails. Like, of course, communism fails. It's incredibly hard.
It's sabotaged by the right-wing elements of society, which is directly still linked to the Nazis. Like still dealing with Nazis. Like that these we're still dealing with the legacy of the Nazis and
That's crazy.
actually the same fucking people.
Yeah.
The only way to defeat the Nazis, I think, is to accept that the atomic bomb is not dwarfed by the evil of the Nazis. I feel like that's when we'll be free of them at last. Is when we put those two things together.
Well, we have to also accept that there's still a presence in those people didn't when World War II ended, the Nazis didn't go away. They just became, it's like there's just now all of these organizations that aren't specifically like state-based organizations. They're like intra and extra governmental organizations on the ground.
Yeah.
Working all over the like
and also
right
the
wing.
UFO base in the Hollow Earth.
I think that it'll be helpful to that end to identify these people that you're talking about as Nazis by a name that isn't a specific historical moment. Like, they're part of a continuum that needs to be opposed.
Exactly.
But continuing to link them to the particular world, like, story of World War II, I think is, and it does a lot of bad things to people's brains. Because
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that to, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think, but some of them are actually just the same people. I mean, there is
true,
like a lineage.
But you you activate.
But it's also the CIA. You know, there's a lot of factions. It's not just the Nazis. That's part of the misnomer too. Is that it's
Well, that's
international. It's a very well organized international or like conglomerate of organizations.
Yeah, that's how organizations like the KKK or the Proud Boys or whatever can say, like, hey, we're not Nazis. We're just white nationalists. And like, you can't link us back to this specific national socialism of Germany in the mid 20th century because we're not socialists. You know, like there's a lot of plausible deniability that comes with the intense focus on Nazism as this thing that we're still fighting, because that's not it ultimately.
Well, I'm not talking about the Proud Boys. Like, that's more of like a boots on the ground, like normal ass dudes kind of thing. I'm talking about like people,
like German banking and petrochemical conglomerates that are like
I'm talking
created
about power,
exactly
power.
out of
Saderkrupp.
In
Deutsche Bank.
So someone who I think is really good at talking about that is that podcast True Anon. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that one.
Oh, that's the funny guy, right?
They're kind of like they're kind of
something.
Brace Belden, yeah.
Brace, yeah, I know.
They're kind of like.
Oh yeah, I know that guy.
They're a great example of a podcast where you have to like, where you really have to kind of like, steel yourself against their personalities, but like you know, you have to kind of like listen to it enough where you can ignore their personalities to get the content. But I highly recommend it. I think their content is like excellent, and they constantly refer back. One of their kind of like callbacks that they're always doing, and sometimes they do like specific episodes or series of episodes about it. But the kind of like a big thesis of theirs is this. They refer to that kind of like international conglomerate of like shadow power or whatever as the Spider Network, which I think is a good funny name for it. But they are really good, I think, at talking about that kind of thing, and they have some really good, interesting episodes about it. I endorse True Anon podcast. I think it's a really good podcast. I think their content is like very good.
That guy, Bruce Belden's a funny guy. He used to play in garage bands that I saw, garage punk bands that I saw in like 2011.
Yeah.
And then it was really weird when it was like, oh yeah, like now he's in the Middle East. It's like shooting guns at fascists.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Anyway, but I think it's a thing. That's a particular area where I think they do really well at parsing that kind of stuff. I recommend listening to it.
Well, I think we haven't talked about Silk for like an hour, so maybe we should.
Well, it's 5 minutes till 2.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We did it.
I mean, we got through this chapter. We got to the end of the chapter.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything I underlined that we didn't at least kind of talk about.
The chapter was boring. It wasn't really like. I didn't think it was as much consequence. It probably was more important, but I was like, whatever. He's in a car. All right. Cool. Whatever.
Yeah.
Next chapter we get vampires.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's like next chapter is totally is when vampires become part of the book.
Do we
Maybe
get
that's what I was thinking of.
Ew, Quimby. Hey. Ew. Oh, I think he just ate something. I don't know what it was.
Like a vampire.
A cricket? Josie's eating a
So-
cricket yesterday.
I am going out of town. There is a possibility I will still be here this coming Sunday, but it's like kind of up in the air the day we're gonna leave.
Well, we were
But I
doing
think-
this one today specifically because you were probably going to be
Right.
out of town. So
Right.
We're
I'm
good
saying
to-
there's a possibility I'll be here this coming Sunday, but I'm not sure. But we
you'll
could
be
just
here the
plan on the 25th.
Right. So the 18th is that.
I'm gonna be gone that one for sure.
Okay. So we'll
Okay.
wait till the 25th.
Are you going to be taking ayahuasca? Couldn't you just like ayahuasca in to the group?
Where did this come from?
I don't know. I just thought maybe that's what if you were going to be gone for a long time, it's because you'd be in South America doing shamanic drugs.
I don't
We're
think
going
you
to the
can get us nothing
Adirondacks. I don't know. I think they're mostly just. I would guess that it's mostly just like weed up there.
They've got
Or
the
Milwaukee.
regular mushroom.
Regular mushroom.
The regular mushroom. The North American. The
Well,
North
anyways-
American cow shit mushroom.
I vote that we just say that it's happening on the 25th.
2-5.
With
Yeah.
the streams, so we can hear all the secrets that people said they would tell us after we're
Oh yeah, we
Okay,
have
all
Easter
right, let's
secrets,
do-
huh?
2-5.
All right, see you later.